Kathleen Felix-Hagen is the costume designer for the new Netflix series about the new military branch of the government, both called Space Force. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, here to ask you, Kathleen, you're doing costumes for a military branch, but it's a new military branch, one we're not as familiar with as people. How much did you want to make familiar costumes, and how much did you want to do something that was different?
Well, the real Space Force sort of came out just like at the same time that the show was ramping up. So we had nothing to compare it to, which was actually better for me because it gave me a sort of free rein to reimagine what these uniforms for a new branch of the military would look like. And after having many discussions with Greg Daniels, who is the creator, along with Steve Carell, really wanted to be respectful of existing military uniforms. Nothing in the show was sort of making fun of the military. So it was very important to be respectful and also to keep them very classic. So we sort of just did a simple twist on the existing Air Force uniform. We changed the color of the shirt and the tie, and then along with art department and props, did all kinds of different patches and had insignias and lapel pins, and that were representative of the new Space Force.
Yes, and I just saw I may have missaid your name, Kathleen Felix-Hager, correct?
Yes, Hager, yeah, with an R.
Sorry,
yeah.
no,
Okay.
I'm not as smart as a doctor, but I do have their handwriting, so I apologize.
Not a problem.
Now, the question I actually had when I was thinking about talking to you today was the character of Erin, which is just a very regular teenage girl, and sort of how she's dressed and things like that, and the character she plays in that world. She's sort of the thing that's different about the show. Was she a relief to design the costumes for, because you're like, oh, something normal, a world that we know, or was she the biggest challenge in the costume?
She was actually, when you're developing a new character, costumes are so much a part of helping the actor get into character and understand their character. So Erin was a little bit of a work in progress at the beginning, because when we first see her, she's very of the Washington, D.C. world. She's a privileged girl. She goes to private school. She's a good student. We see her very briefly in that, green floral dress at the very beginning of the show. And then when we, cut to a year later and we see her in Wild Horse, Colorado, she's just beside herself with sort of teen angst and anger that she was moved to this place, and that's reflective in the way she's dressed. So we sort of, I ended up using a lot of vintage pieces and thrift store pieces, because that's where Diana Silver, who plays Erin, we had a lot of discussion about where would Erin get these clothes. So that's where we based that off of. And also a lot of things like she wears, her dad's old shirts and old t-shirts and old sweatshirts, but then also there's a little bit of old Erin that comes through in those little sweet little thermals that have the little flowers on them that she wears underneath her Neil Armstrong uniform, or that she uses to sleep in. So she takes things from her past life and incorporates them in her real life. So we really wanted to make her look like a real person and not the TV version of the angsty teenager. So hopefully we succeeded.
Yeah, I just thought, oh, she's one that you don't have a structure for. Like once you come up with the military outfit, sort of everyone sort of wears that in Space Force, but she's one that sort of you can do a bit more evolution with as a character. What was the biggest challenge for you in designing the costumes for this series?
I've done military things before. I designed Veep. There were elements of military costumes in that. So I was familiar with the different branches of the government, but nothing as such a deep dive as this one. And I really was important for me to get it right and to be respectful. So that was really the biggest challenge. There's so much research going into the different branches of the government uniforms and the ranks, and transferring that information to a new branch of, the Space Force. So we kept all the existing ranks, but just made them our version of Space Force. So, there's Class A, Class B, fatigues, and all the rank that goes along with that to make sure those were correct. We did have a military advisor on the show that was very, very helpful to me and my department. But that was my biggest challenge, was to be respectful and correct, because I know that, it's people that serve, it's such a point of pride, and I didn't want to in any way diminish that.
Mm. Is there a costume you're most proud of, or that you enjoyed the most on the show?
I really love Steve Carell's Class A uniform, his most formal, and in particular his sort of ribbon rack, because Greg Daniels had this whole Bible backstory for the character of Mark Naird. So very, very detailed about his service in the military and all the things that he had done, and all his ribbons and awards and medals. So we incorporated all of that backstory into that rack of ribbons. So I'm particularly proud of that. And yeah, I've had a couple military people send me messages through Instagram or Twitter saying, that how well we did in representing that. So I'm proud of that one.
Oh, nice. Felt like I was about to sneeze, but I didn't.
Bless you.
Thank you. A preemptive one. Maybe it's going to come down the track.
Yeah.
What was you've done work before, as you said, Veep. You did work. How is this different to any show or work you've done previously?
I think it's just the scope of the show. When I first was approached to do the show, I'd worked with Greg once before and really had a lovely working relationship with him. And so when he asked me to do this, I sort of jumped at the chance to work with him again, but not knowing too much about it. He basically said, it's a, workplace comedy about a new branch of the military. I was like, okay, great. So, and then a couple of weeks later, I met with him in his office, and he started going over the story and what his vision of it was and the scope. And then I just sort of was like, I think I might have built off a little bit too much, but it's just it's a very grand scale. And I think you see it in all the episodes. I mean, not only the costumes, but the way it's filmed, the cinematography is so beautiful, and the production design is so ambitious, and all of those pieces working together was really a challenge, but a good one. I think, everyone sort of had to up their game. I don't think anyone really realized when we started the show what was in Greg's mind. And then, we came to learn what was in Greg's mind, and hopefully he's happy with the result.
Yeah. From what I understand, Greg is quite a collaborative producer and showrunner. From the perspective of being in costumes, how did that sort of collaboration work?
I mean, he's really, really an amazing person to work with, just from all departments. I think he really welcomes, we'll have discussions about characters or different concepts, and then I'll show him sketches and photos, and even at the beginning, talking about just the uniforms for the military, for example, I wasn't sure what his vision was as far as, were we doing Star Trek? Were we doing, where did his vision of this world begin? So I know working with him is just amazing. And sometimes he'll have an idea, and we'll be talking about a character, and he'll draw these amazing little stick figure things and show them to me. But I just love that he's so welcoming of ideas, and I'm never, it's always wonderful just to pick up the phone or pop in his office and have a conversation, and he's just amazing like that.
What's an idea that you had for this season of the show that you're particularly sort of proud of, or you get a kick out of?
I love the moon camo fatigues. That was sort of just, I think it's my favorite thing because it's such a funny image. I mean, when I found, I worked with this graphic designer and came up with the concept of this moon print, and then showed it to Greg, and he just was all in with it immediately. And that's one of the things about the costumes that are so kind of subtle, is that it's this ridiculous print. Like you would never be in moon camo on the moon, you would, yeah, that's ridiculous. But but the fact that we also, when we made the fatigues, we used the existing BDU pattern that the Army and the Air Force use currently. So it's an existing uniform that military is familiar with, but it's just using our fabric. So there's that sort of balance of ridiculousness and realness that I think the show sort of threads throughout. And I just love those costumes so much. They're my favorite.
Yeah, and look, the moon camo is a big part of the sort of promotion of the show. Like when you go into Netflix, it's the big moon camo with the characters standing in front of the background and stuff.
I know when Netflix was really supportive of the show from the very beginning, and they loved, obviously, when they saw it, they all laughed and thought it was funny. But when we were doing all the promo shoots, and then they were, coming to me and saying, well, we're going to use this as the background, I thought, well, maybe this is a really good thing. I was like, I should pat myself on the back a little bit for that one. That was good. It felt nice.
Yeah. Oh, it's really cool. What about the scenes that we actually had later in the season where we get to see sort of astronaut suits and stuff like that? How did sort of they come together?
Well, the first time we see an astronaut suit is when Steve Carell's character goes to the lunar habitat, and that is a super bulky suit, and that worked well for the sort of the comedy of what he had to do in that episode, running in the desert and all of that. And then later on, when they're actually going to the moon, it's they, in the storyline, that they wanted boots on the moon by 2024. So they're actually putting boots on the moon in 2020. So just such like lightning speed of them getting up and running and putting people in space. So we use space suits that actually exist, and we just used our patches. But it was amazing to have all of these spacesuits, because we had the white ones that they used to go outside of this capsule, and then the orange ace suits where they used to, launch and be inside the capsule at the beginning. Filming being such that it is, we're doing all these different scenes at different times. We had 2 units going out, towards the end. So we had, I think at one point we had, 40 spacesuits, and each spacesuit comes with its own technician to help the actors get in and out. And it was just this massive undertaking to use these spacesuits. But the actors all had a great time being in them. They just loved it.
Do you have a moment on the show that you think is the funniest moment watching, or that you laughed particularly, that just comes into your mind as well, that you thought was really funny?
I love the scene where they're all sort of bouncing on the moon. I think that's really fun. That set was amazing. And they were all, the actors, not only were they in their spacesuits, but they were harnessed. So, and they just had such a great time. But I love that image of them just sort of like floating and bouncing on the moon. I think it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. And what's your favorite thing about the series? Not necessarily, it could be about the costumes, but just your favorite thing about the series as a whole.
I love the relationship between Steve Carell's character and John Malkovich's character. I think that is such a treat as a fan of actors, and it just was so wonderful to work with both of them and to watch what they did with their characters, and that relationship I thought that was my favorite part. I just love it. And I'm such a huge John Malkovich fan, and he was just such a treat to be able to work with. And as was Steve, so kind. And I guess I think that I just take away just such good memories of working on the show. It was incredibly hard work. It was a really difficult show for all the departments. We worked on such a tight schedule, and the expectations were so huge. But I just, we all just had a really, really fun time. I think Greg just puts together really special groups of people that are hardworking and kind and nice to each other. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me of working on the show, is just how much fun we all had.
We're an awards website, Gold Derby. As you said, you worked on Veep, which won Best Comedy Series 3 years. What do you have a favorite costume from that show that you worked on?
Yes. Very early on, there's an episode where Selena and the gang go to London, and there's a scene where she's at a funeral and she's in just this ridiculous, huge black and white hat and with this gigantic plume of feathers. I just love that image so much. And also Armando Iannucci, who created that series, once he saw the hat, they sort of like started to write jokes to the hat. So that was fun. I love that costume.
That's cool. To finish off, I'm just wondering if there's a particular film or television series where, for you growing up, you saw the costumes in and sort of thought, oh, that'd be something cool to do. Or that you at least saw how effective costumes could be in storytelling.
Wow. I mean, I guess the one that comes to mind is The Wizard of Oz. I just think that was so imaginative and beautiful, and how it starts in black and white and then turns to color, and her red shoes. I think that's it's one of my favorite movies, and I adore the costumes in that. So I guess that'd be my answer.
No, it's a good one. It's iconic. So, Kathleen, thank you so much for talking with us about Space Force. All the best for the Emmy Awards in the pipeline and other honors and things that are down the road. All the best. And for people watching this interview, you can go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for Hollywood's top awards, and watch other interviews with awards contenders. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you. So nice to talk to you.